That's not for you, that was for her.
He's a lot more entertaining than I am. He's counting.
I was going to do that for you, Jerry.
Okay.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Shades of Green. I appreciate everybody coming this morning. The weather is absolutely perfect. We're not having those hot, humid days like we did the last couple of days. So, and did anybody here get any rain?
Yeah.
Excellent. No, not enough. No, I got a little bit, but I'll take anything this time.
Lots of lightning and thunder.
I know they were predicting all those big storms, and you get all prepared for it. Nothing happens.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Well, it's down the road.
Exactly. Somebody's got to get it. It's just in us. This morning's topic is going to be on hanging baskets. And how many of you have been to this seminar before? So a few. So most of you, this is your first time for this seminar. Okay. How many people are new that have never been to the nursery before? Okay. Excellent. Very good. Well, we appreciate you coming. Come on in. What we're going to be talking about again is designing hanging baskets. When people think of a hanging basket, very oftentimes this is what you think of.
Yeah.
This is not a hanging basket to me. This is a grow pot. This is what the plants come in from the growers, and you can transplant it into something else. You know, it serves the purpose. You can get a beautiful plant in something like this. But for decorative purposes, I always recommend you do one of two things. You take the plant out and transfer it to either a wire basket like this, which is just your basic galvanized, lined with either moss or a cocoa liner, and I'll show you those in a minute. My favorite type of basket to use is what is known as a chambers basket. These are made in England. They are steel, vinyl coated steel. These are virtually indestructible. They last forever. I have some that I have had for well over 10 years, and they look as good as when I started. They don't rust, and they can hold a lot of weight. This particular one, which is the galvanized, these are good also, lined with moss, but you typically will get a lifespan of about maybe 2 years out of this, and then they do start to rust. And just because of the weight of the plant material and the moss, they tend to break. And again, this is typically what the plants come in, but for most purposes, it's not very decorative. Now, if you do get a plant that comes in this and you don't want to go to a lot of trouble to transplant, particularly if it's something that doesn't take well to transplanting, very oftentimes things like bougainvilleas will come in these type of baskets. Bougainvilleas are not real happy when you start manipulating them, especially when they're blooming. You tend to mess them up. So what I do is I take these wires off of this basket, leave it in the pot, and then I'll take a basket like either this or a more decorative chambers basket, line it with moss, and then just set this down in there. So that way you're getting the look of a moss-lined basket without all the work. So that, and it also helps when you're taking something that's in a plastic pot like this and putting a moss liner in between. It helps to keep the root system more cool during the summer months. Bougainvilleas in particular are really hot weather plants, but what happens when you have plastic and they're in direct sun, it really heats up the root ball, and it requires that you water more, and it stresses the plant. So this way the plant itself is getting the sun it needs, but yet the root ball is staying cool. So that's another way of getting around that. There's a couple of different things you can use to line these with. I typically will use the long fiber sphagnum moss, and it comes in different size bales. This size bale right here will do one basket about this size, do about a 14-inch basket. You can also get it in half bales and full bales if you do larger baskets like some of these. One like this will take over a half a bale to put moss in that. There's also what are known as pressed moss liners. This is the same product, but they've actually compressed it. And this is a little bit of a time saver, because all you have to do, it's shaped already depending on the size basket that you're putting it in. You just line the basket with it and then wet it down, and it plumps up, and it looks just like your typical sphagnum moss, except it's a lot less work. Now what you see here that I'm going to be using today is the loose moss, and I soak it in water. You just take it out and put it in a bucket, a trash can, whatever you happen to have, and soak it for at least 30 minutes. It needs to absorb enough moisture that you can work with it, because if you try to work with it when it's dry, it's going to be very, very difficult to keep it from falling through. But what you're typically going to do, and I do recommend you wear gloves when you're using sphagnum moss, because you can get some bacteria and things out of the moss. It is a natural product. They harvest it up in, I believe, in Wisconsin. And it's always a good idea when you're working in case you have cuts or something on your hand. But ideally, when you're doing a loose sphagnum moss like this, you want the consistency to be about like a wet sponge. You want enough moisture in it that you can squeeze it in a ball, let it drain, but you want to be able to work with it so you can pack it into the basket and not have it fall through. If you like, you can add to your water that you're soaking it with, you can add a root stimulator product like Super Thrive, or you could add seaweed. Some people just use the seaweed. That's beneficial also because that's going to actually surround the roots of the plants that you're working with. Today, I will be doing a demonstration for you a little bit later on how to put a basket together. But say you're working with a typical galvanized basket like this. They come in different sizes from 12 inches on up to about 24 inches. Anything larger than that in this size basket is going to really be too heavy. So if you're going to go to larger sizes, definitely select one of the steel baskets because they're going to hold the weight better. Nothing is more frustrating than to get a big basket like this, get it all planted, and then have one of the wires break and the whole thing goes down. And I've had that happen, and so I always recommend using the sturdier baskets for that. Say you're starting with something like this, one of the simple little tricks I always show everybody that people seem to have trouble with, and it's one of those things, it's when you think about it, you're amazed at what a simple thing it is and why you didn't think of it. Trying to get the wires lined up when you're attaching them to the basket. This was a 3-wire prong. You have some that have 3 and some that have 4. When you want to make the lengths of them all the same, just grab them all together and give it a turn like that. That way you know that all of your lengths on your wire are going to be the same. What happens, a lot of times people will start and they'll put one here and one here and one here and you hang it and it's like this.
Oh.
And then you fix it and it's like this and then it's like this. So this is a real simple way of getting it level before you do all the work. And you're just going to run that through each side of the basket. On this particular one, I'm using a 3-prong just simply because it is a smaller size. On larger baskets, I always use a 4-prong. And you can also tell by the number of sections on the basket what size, how many prongs you should use, because on this particular one, since it's a 3-prong, I'm attaching it to every other vertical wire in the basket. That way you're getting even spacing all the way around. Let me get this attached and I will show you exactly how you want to do that. Now when you do attach it, you want to run it over the vertical wire, not just along the side, because if you put it here, it's going to move on you, and that same thing happens. It causes friction that can cause the wire to break. It also causes the basket to be unlevel. So attach it to the vertical section and then wrap it over the top and back through. You want a really good wrap on that piece of wire so that it's not going to slip through when you get plants and soil in there. Because believe it or not, these baskets are pretty heavy when you get them full of soil. The moss itself can actually hold 20 times its weight in water, which is a good thing, but again, you've got to consider the weight. So on this one, let me get this attached. And like I said, these are quick and easy, and they're readily available. You can find these almost anywhere. And these are great when you want to do a simple basket with lots of plants, and when you don't want the basket to really show, because by the time you get moss in this, the basket's not even going to be visible, particularly if you put enough plants in it. And any of you who know how I plant, you're not going to see any soil or very much moss on a basket like this. But that's a typical 14-inch. Okay. The chambers baskets, there's a couple of features about this that I really like. They have the spacing a little bit wider, so you can actually use larger ones. You can use larger plants to go through. And the other thing I like is the bottom of it is not totally flat. So if you wanted to, if you had a basket that you were hanging really high, you could actually plant the very bottom of this. And the plants would come out of that, and you wouldn't even see the basket on that either. The other thing I do like is they typically are deeper, so you can get more soil. Because by the time you put moss in here, you're going to put a good 2-inch layer of moss around these sides. You lose a lot of space. A basket this size, by the time you get the moss in there, you're not going to have a whole lot of room for the root ball of your plants, particularly if you're using larger plants. The other thing I do like about the chambers is they come with chains that are separate. So what you can do, and the way I'll do it today, is I'm going to plant the basket on this stand. Well, you can then hang your chains and attach the basket. They have little open hooks, so they're real easy to attach, and you can just string them up that way. On a large basket, if you have ever tried to hang one that has just the ring's attached or the wire's attached and you have one little hook and you're trying to maneuver a heavy basket and get it through that one little eye hook. It's very, very difficult. So this is easy. You can put the chains up first and then attach the basket to it. It's just a lot easier. Now if you're dealing with really large baskets, this is what I consider a medium. This is a 17-inch diameter, which is a good size to work with. And you can get enough plants in it to look good. These are 17.